Good morning, Facebook fam. What's going on? It's your girl, Neo Soul recording artist Lahla-Hadiya, back on a Tuesday, bright and early for another segment of Morning Tea with Mommy. So, you know the drill. Give me those thumbs up, those hearts, those happy faces. Let me know that you guys are up bright and early and ready for your day. I love to know that you guys are doing well. Y'all have become my family, you know what I'm saying? So today's topic is, why is it so hard to forgive? Hmm. So I know you guys have something to say about this. I can't wait, right? I've been waiting all night to hear what you guys have to say. Wow. Somebody just okay, Sharina. The Lord dealt with me about forgiveness this morning in prayer. So I need to know what he said if you can share, because sometimes, or a lot of times, God uses us as vessels. But you know that, And I had this conversation with my oldest daughter um, last night, and I decided to make it a topic amongst us adults because so we do Bible study every day with our children, and each day someone else gets the lead. And so today is her day, and that's something she's been struggling with, and so she decided to have that be the lead of her Bible study discussion, forgiveness. So come on, girl. I need to hear what the Lord had to say so I can have some things to share. That's why we network. That's why God allows lives to intercept. I'm going to bring my mom on real quick. What's going on, everybody? Everybody's like up bright and early on a Tuesday. Y'all just don't get up on Mondays, huh? That's what it is? Or is it because it's sunny outside? Or it's sunny over here? Let me see where my mama is. Yo! What's going
Hi,
on with you?
everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Hey, beautiful.
It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood. One morning, I'm going to capture a picture of the trees blowing in the wind. I had an English teacher once who started every class talking about nature and how beautiful it was. It is. But I'm hoping everybody had a good night's rest and you're up bright eyed and bushy tailed. And
If you bushy tail, we need to have a whole nother discussion.
that's another topic
If
at
you
any
bushy
rate.
tail and you on here, I don't
I'm
know
just
how they
happy,
came up
happy.
with that statement.
I am happy to be here.
Hey,
How is
Marcia,
everybody?
what?
Everybody's
Marcia
beautiful,
woke up
beautiful.
early to get over here with us today.
Look at you. Look at you. Look at that Nubian
Yes,
queen.
I tried
All
to. I tried.
right.
Look, I tried to match your gangster or your
Yeah, I have to
queenism.
check
I
it.
tried.
See, did you check that out of my jewelry store?
I did not. So let me tell y'all real quick before we get into it. She tried to put me out there on Front Street. So my mother has so much jewelry that literally it's like going to a library. So
She shot.
I actually shop at her house, and I'll tell her what I'm looking for. She got like a slideshow that she can show you on what she got, the colors are. Let me tell you, that's why I can't let nobody know where she live at. But anyway, yeah. But this isn't yours. This is my piece.
That's beautiful. You look ravishing this morning.
Sharina
All
said, "Good
right.
morning, mom." She said,
Good
"Good morning to
morning,
you."
everybody. Mwah.
So let's dive into this. All right, let's dive into this. Why is it so hard to forgive? Like, we say it all the time. Let me just be transparent, because I realized what I was doing over the years was not really forgiving. I think I said it so much that I was trying to convince myself, because I don't think I was truly forgiving. Now, I'm not even talking about forgetting about the situation, but I think that played a factor for me in being able to fully forgive someone. Um, and we all know the forgiveness part is that forgiveness piece is for us. not the other person, because there are a lot of times that you could be done wrong, and that person may apologize, they may not, but they are going on about their life while you stay up at night, while you wake up at night, or you walk around disgruntled about the situation, and you're basically like taking years off your life because you stressing it out. How could they have done this? How could they have said this? All that I've done for them, that yada yada yada. And so the forgiveness piece is really for us, so that we can, with a clean slate, just move forward, with our life and what God has for us. And so, on a personal level, I feel like years ago I realized that I wasn't really in a place of forgiveness. It was an illusion because the moment something else looked like that thing, I would bring that thing up, you know? Um, and the bite that I would have, or the bark that I would have, um, was so strong that I would have to look back at myself and be like, yo, you really, no, so you didn't forgive. Like, that's still bothering you? And so I'm like, I need to know for me and my baby girl, and some others out here that are attached to these fees that really want to know, why is it, why do we think it's so hard for us to forgive? Because I believe that once we get to the root of the thing, then we can begin to work on it, and correct behaviors, so that we can, be in a state of forgiveness, of true forgiveness, so that we can move on and um, effectively walk in our purpose. Because that may be stunting our growth, which is necessary for us to get to the next level. So, what say you? Let me see. Marcia says, forgiveness is hard for me without closure. Maybe that's it. When if I get closure, nah. There's sometimes you may think you're closing it, and I'm like, that wasn't genuine. And then I go into this judging piece, like, was they for real? Nah, I feel you on that one. I feel you on that one. Hey, April. April, I'm gonna bring you on here one day. We're gonna have a segment, um, about artists, and I'm gonna bring this dope, amazing, gorgeous, beautiful artist on here. April Sanpay. Like, I had the privilege of chilling out in high school, 12th grade Spanish class when I was supposed to be in French 7, with her. And so, yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. Get to know her. Let me see. Somebody said forgiveness, um, comes from center of heart or true belief of the God of our understanding. Lord God, to be without without me less in your own heart. Let me try to understand that. Macau, explain, go deeper. Go deeper, King. I need to understand that. 'Cause I want to share. Mom, what you got over there? April
Just
said it's so hard to
listening.
forgive.
I decided to listen, sit back and listen. You know, I've never
She's an
really
angel in
had a
earth. She forgives
problem.
everything.
I've never had a problem with forgiving. Um, and I used to think that that was a downside of me until I grew deeper and deeper in faith. You know, I think once we have a true belief system, whom we believe in, our creation, our creator, it should not, well, it's not hard at all for me. Forgiveness is actually, um, for us to really, we're looking for the forgiveness piece to settle our mind, to be for us, when it's in actuality, um, I mean, we're looking for it to be for the other person to come forth. It's almost as if we're waiting for that person to come. I was wrong and I did this and I did that. No, the forgiveness piece is for you to settle, for us to settle our minds, our spirits. Um, if we only thought for a moment of how forgiving God is for us, think about all of the things that we've done. We some known and some unknown things that we've done. Um, and yet God still loves us. He still takes care of us. He forgives us, and who are we to not forgive someone else? You know, um, I think we would be terribly, terribly upset uh, if God was not a forgiving God.
Mm-hmm.
So as we take a closer look at our belief system, who is it? What do we believe in? Who do we believe in? How did you get here? How do you think you got here? How is it you're still breathing? You're still existing. Um, you've done the things we've done, the things we've done, and yet we are still among the living. God has not cast us out into the abyss. So as I said, for me, it's always. Um, I found it easy to forgive. In fact, sometimes I looked at it as a weakness, but the more I grow spiritually uh, into my belief system, I realize that that's where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to forgive, such as God forgives me. Um, you know, um, someone mentioned about closure. Of course, closure is always good to settle that our minds, to say, okay, this happened and this is what I could have, should have done. This is what you could have, should have done. But the reality is that's not going to always happen. People are not going to always, self included, are not going to always do things the way we feel or believe they should do them. So, for peace of mind, peace of spirit, we have to be the big guy and say, it's done. And if it's possible to talk it over with that person or persons,
Mm-hmm.
then you do so. If not, within yourself, you have a praying spirit, you pray over it and you let it go. That's the big issue with a lot of us. We don't want to let it, we really don't want to let it go. And who is hurt in those situations? We are hurt when you keep something on. Like I heard someone say, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't do anything because it's on your mind. I refuse to allow anything but God to have that much control over my life.
Mm.
And I think when we start to look at it from that standpoint, it becomes a lot easier to forgive.
April says it's hard for her to forgive, but she's been meditating on that, and she's began to forgive herself for a lot of things, and that's what's
That's
making
a
it
good start.
easier for her to forgive others. And I agree because I
Good
think
start.
what we can't do to ourselves or for ourselves is it's hard to do for other people. Like we talked a couple of segments ago about just love, and loving yourself, having a self worth, and you can't like I can't with comfort forgive certain things if I'm unable to give certain things about myself. Like there are things now, there are certain things that are a lot easier to forgive. Like those things that you consider minor, or, like that was nothing. I mean, it was something, but it was nothing to lose sleep over. And so it's a lot easier, for that to just be a bump in the road or whatever. And then, you take it as a chuck on the chin and you keep going. And then there are things that cut deep, like, and I think that's for me. That's the thing that makes it difficult. I'll say because certain cuts and bruises, they heal up faster. But there's certain cuts and bruises that are cut so deep that as I continue to dress that wound, it's a constant reminder of the hurt, of the pain, that I endured, which brings back the memory. And we all say, I forgive, but I won't forget. And I think it's just an excuse to stay in that period, that state of unforgiveness, because when you already start out with the mindset of I can forgive you, but I won't forget, you like it's kind of like you negate the whole forgiving process. We all know that there are some things. Now, some things you just out of sight, out of mind, but there are some things we just know. We know, we're not going to forget it, especially if there was a lesson to be learned, which is most of the trials and tribulations we go through. But to outright say, I'll forgive, but I'm definitely not going to forgive it. It's almost like a blanket for, I'm going to say I forgive you, but like, yeah, nah, I don't know,
Yeah,
and
and that's the thing is, I often think during this pandemic, and I know that's just a buzzword nowadays, it's a very serious buzzword. If we don't take a different outlook after this, then I dare say something's wrong. Everything, the norms, the normal, what we consider normal, has been completely shifted. There is definitely a shift in the atmosphere. Everything we thought was being controlled by man, it's not. And if you and I believe wrestling with forgiveness is a choice. It's definitely a choice, and it's up to us. It's up to us to dwell on it, to stew in it, as the old folk would say, stew in it. Just keep it stirred up in our minds, and it affects every aspect of our life when that happens. When you allow something to sit there, it's just like a pot that you put on the stove, and you keep the heat on it. It's gonna keep cooking, keep cooking, keep cooking. And so I choose, as for me and my house, I choose to be free, to free myself, to allow my mind to be free of anything that's going to have control over me. And when you are unforgiving, and just take take any circumstance that you've ever experienced where you had to, or you had the option to forgive someone. I myself, and I'm not saying by any means that it's easy, because it is not. I, after almost 40 years of educating, and I know I was a darn good educator. However, the last few years, I was put to the test, because I had people who, and we've talked about this earlier sessions, where people, you walking around, people just don't like you because they don't like you, or they don't even know why they don't like
right,
you,
right.
or their expressions, their demeanor, their body language, everything about them sends up the flag. Who is this person? Who she thinks she is? And I spent, out of a beautiful, beautiful career, I spent the last 10 years, I would say, 10 years under an administration that obviously, you know, and in the words of, and this will be in my book, in the
Here
words
we
of
go.
one of the administrators, targeted me. And I don't know if any of you've been in those situations, but you just walk in a room, you're automatically targeted. And initially, I'm thinking, as we often do, yeah, well, maybe it's something I did, something I said.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, nah, it ain't about that at all. It's just because. And so I spent, for the last 10 years, the first half of that time, I spent beginning to get insecure, paranoid. Um, and then even after I left and retired, there was a period of time where I spent still trying to figure out what was it, because I'm talking to God, like I'm talking to you. God, was it something I did, something I said, something I didn't do? And I realized, it wasn't about me at all. We
Hmm.
wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And that, is where I ended up. And it wasn't until I dealt with that myself, dealt with myself, that I realized, hey, forgive the person. And I would look forward to the day when I would just and walk into a situation where I'd see these people again. And some I have, and I, through my demeanor, through my attitude, through my spirit, um, say, hey, I'm done with it. I love you, and it's nothing you can do about it. And just go on with life. That is one of the keys to my happiness, is putting stuff behind me, you know, and just moving on with my life. You're a much happier person when you forgive.
So you made a statement about it not being about us, and that just that just got to me. It as a conviction
We're
because
in this world for not for our, we're in this world, and we've talked about this in previous broadcasts, to 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 reach out. Go ye and teach all nations. God, Jesus Christ, challenged, he charged each one of us as disciples to go out and reach all nations. And I believe, and I much believe that's where we are at this point. He's such God is such a good God. He wants everybody to be accepted, to come into his fold. And all of this that we're going through now is an opportunity. Every day that you wake up and you feel breath is an opportunity for you to get it right. And I do believe that. So, it's for us to reach out to others. Others have to see the God in us. Just like right now, others have to see the church in us through our attitudes, through our behaviors, and I believe much that that's what God's looking for.
it's amazing how God works because so let me just be transparent. So yesterday was my day to lead Bible study in my household, right? And I was talking about trials and tribulations. And we were talking about, does God send trials? Um, or trials, things that, people be like, ain't nothing but the devil. But does God send trials? And my answer was yes. And so I wrote these things. They came to me Sunday night. I was sitting in my office, and um, it says, God blesses us through anointed weakness. If one suffering would mean a result in good for someone else, that it would be used to bring someone to God, then the trial is actually a badge of honor. Um, a God who sees suffering and allows it with no greater purpose or hope, what God is that? But our God is able to save us, and He will. But save us from what? Um, and which and what He's saving us from is a life without Him. And so I also put we need to learn to view bad things as good things in disguise. These are disciplines that God wants His children to develop as they mature spiritually. And I'm sitting here listening to you, right? And because I literally have a problem um, um, with forgiving certain hurts, and it's not that I don't want to. It's just the hurt is so deep, and as I nurse my own wound, I'm not really nursing my own wound. Like, okay, God. So as that wound is being nursed, I'm constantly reminded of the hurt and the pain, right? Um, but then I'm sitting here, I'm like, God is amazing because, and I'm sorry. This is a candid conversation that we have. That's what this whole morning tea with mommy is about. But I am who I am. I am a creation of the creator, so I can't operate without bringing him into it. So I'm sorry. I take that apology back. I'm not sorry because that's who I am, and so I have to bring him in this. And I'm listening to you, Ma. I'm reading the comments, And I was reminded of something that God put on my heart to write down, as I was discussing with, trials and tribulations. And just the act of forgiveness could be the light or the key to God being able to draw someone else to Him, even that person that hurt you. Because the fact that you could forgive a wrong that deep, um, may be the deciding factor of them wanting to know the God that you know. And so if, because I know God has me, I know I'm going to come back for it. I always tell my kids, no matter how the cookie crumbles, God has you in His hand. So whether you're healed from it in this life or beyond this life, you either heal from it here and God's got you, or if you get taken out of here, God's got you. So you're already set. But if it means me going through that so that this person or that person can have the opportunity to have the same experience of eternal life, then that hurt becomes not just a hurt. It's like a badge of honor. Like, yo, like God actually used me to be able to bring you or somebody else, to Him. Like, because that's
As a
ultimately what it's
vessel.
about. Like you said, it's not about us. It's not about us. Like, the whole purpose of Satan is to prove that they only serve you when you're doing good for them. So
Absolutely.
he will throw all kinds of things out. He'll use your closest friend. He'll use, your family members to hurt you and cut you so deep. Because if I can get you off his team, if I can get you off track, then I can prove, because my fight ain't with y'all. Y'all disposable. Like, yo, we are nothing to Satan. If we were matched for Satan, God would not have had to tell him, yo, you can't touch them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are no match for Satan. Satan's like, if I wanted to, if I had the privilege, if God allowed, I would destroy you on spot. You know what I'm saying? But I use things. I'm conniving. I'm clever. Like, cause he's a smart dude. So he uses things and situations and people. And what better way to destroy you than through hurt and pain?
And
You
and
know?
that's how
Wow.
you
Yeah,
think
that's
about it. That's how we can tell
yeah,
that we're in the last days.
yeah,
Read your Bible, read your Bible, because you said something. What better way to test our faith than to when let something happens to the closest person that we believe in our lives? And when it starts getting to it, it's like if you ever watched a movie or so of a wild animal tearing something apart, attacking something, and they just pull it all apart until they get to the marrow and then, to the bone. It's like uh, our loved ones, I equate with that bone to the innermost of us, that part that in many cases keeps us going is our loved ones,
yeah,
our husbands, our children, our mother, our loved ones, and I believe that in times like this, Satan is so desperate that he's like, oh, is it like Job? I'm going to destroy your family, your children, your cattle, everything that we hold dear. I remember, and I will always, this is also spoiler, and when my house was totally burnt down except for the chimney, and I have pictures of this. It was during a time when my mom, I was going back and forth every weekend, um, traveling to Virginia to assist in the care of my mom, my 90-some-year-old mom. And during that time, when one of the times when I had to stay longer than anticipated, my house was set to fire, was vandalized and set to fire. And the fire chief said to me, and I will always remember those words when I came out to look at it, and I just was in tears. And he said two things: you're insured, and first he said no loved ones were lost, no one was lost in the fire, and you're insured. Those two things he said. Other than that, you have no worries. You have no worries. And that set me straight, really. It put me back on the track of my faith and my belief in God, you know? And oftentimes it doesn't say that we're not going to have trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
but what it does say, you don't have to go through it alone, you know? And I really believe, much believe that in times like this is where God wants us to, He wants us to trust Him.
Yeah.
Whatever you believe in, hey, I'm just an encourager. I'm just an encourager. And my thing, this side of my life, is to be a living example for others, that they may see his good works through me. Um, so as we are forgiving people, and first we have to forgive ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
forgive ourselves and then forgive those. I've seen situations where people have held on to their anger, to their whatever it was that caused the discord between themselves and another person or people, till the person dies, and they're still at the death, they are still holding on. What happens? They will they continue to hold on, and that whatever hatred or dislike or disdain that they went through, they are miserable for the rest of their lives. They are miserable because they did not allow the forgiveness piece, they and just move on. And had I, in my situation, because it was very hurtful what I went through, I'm like, God, I used to say, God, all these years I've dedicated myself to other people's children, other people, kids and adults, teaching and educating, and this is what I get towards the last. And it wasn't until I just had to stop and refocus and realize what was really happening here. A test of my faith. And we have to
Yeah.
really, get to the point where we allow that spirit, our belief system, to kick in, and start realizing you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to. And for those who hold on to the anger, the hatred, or what have you, you're only pulverizing yourself. You are really bringing disdain to yourself. Remember what God said to Job. It's like, hey, yeah, it was said to Satan. You can destroy his cattle, you can destroy his home, his children, his family, but you can't touch his soul. And I keep that in mind in any and every situation. Um, that God has me. He's got me. He's got me. You know, Material things will soon pass away. They'll pass away. But my soul, as long as I stay grounded, then I'm good. I'm good. I'm
So
good.
a lot of times some of us feel like, and I'm gonna include myself in there, um, that in order to forgive, we just gotta know why. Like why? I think that eats us
Lord,
up
why?
more than
Yeah.
than the hurt itself. It's like
Why it
why?
happened?
And
Yeah.
it's and as I'm sitting here listening to you and reading the comments, I'm like, we have to learn how to accept the fact that we'll never know why that individual may have done what they have done.
Amen.
Because sometimes they don't even know why, you
They
know?
don't. They
Um,
don't.
if, and it all goes back to it not being about us. You know what I'm saying? It's a spiritual war.
It's a
So
spiritual warfare.
sometimes they're just used by the enemy because they were weak in that moment or they're a weaker vessel, in that time and space. Um, to be the one because they knew that that hurt would cut deeper than that hurt. Like somebody who is what you would consider insignificant in your life. They do something. What we all do. We like, man, what was to be expected. Whatever. I just cut them off. But somebody who you may have to see every day. Somebody who you wake up with every day. Um, somebody who you see in church every day, somebody who you see at your job every single day, where you cannot, there is not a clear separation with you and that person. Um, you're faced with that whole, like, why would they even do that? Like, why would you do that? And then we go back to, out of all the things that I've done, for them, with them or whatever, how could you do this to me?
What better
And
way to get to us than through somebody that is really close to us?
that's the
It's a
hook right there. Like, yeah, like, would it be
test for
as
the test.
effective? It's just like looking at it like this. So we know that, like, as Jesus said, he's come to give us life and life more abundantly, right? And we know Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. What better way to do either of those things than through somebody that would
Somebody that is
affect
close.
us, deeper than a other person. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely. And
go ahead.
And those of us who have children, and you go through those times in their lives, that teen year. We talk about the terrible twos, but then there's the terrible teens, and
Hey,
and then sometimes the terrible adult age, where we go through those stages of where you just lock horns, and you wonder oftentimes, I fed this person, taken care of them, children, and yet they still just buck against us, and lash out at us. It's a terrible time for parents, if ever there was a terrible time, but then again, it's a good time, where the kids, your children, and the adults and the family, are in the house together. It's almost like, in a cage together, so
yes,
hey, it's like sink or
I'm in
swim.
a cage.
It's like sink or swim,
Yeah.
and so you got to deal with it, or you're gonna do what you've done in the past and just brush it off and just pass it by, But what happens? You pass it by, you sweep it under the carpet, and this is what has happened, not only in our homes but in schools, in the government, where things are just, it's everything but what's right. It's everything but, what's in the best interest of the whole. It's, people are just looking at their individual needs and desires and whatever. So, you know, if ever there was a time for us to start looking at the people in the mirror, the man in the mirror first, the woman in the mirror first, and then as you're doing that, you're dealing with yourself. And I've often said, you can't change anybody. You don't have that kind of power. You can't change anybody yourself. You can only do it through the intervention of your belief system. As for me and my belief system, of course, that is God through Jesus Christ. So I know that I don't have to deal with things, adversities, by myself. I have help. I got my posse, who is a one, the Trinity, where I got my posse behind me, beside me, in front of me, to help me get through these situations. I had a moment yesterday where I'm thinking about all that's happening, all of the people who are suffering, the ones who have lost loved ones. But you know what I was thinking, as I often think when I lose a loved one, the first thing that comes to my mind, people that I don't know, I'm I'm praying that they were saved. I'm praying that they had made peace with their creator. I'm praying that they had a belief system that they could hold on to
Hmm.
and take with them into the abyss of wherever they believe they are going. And so the whole thing now is realizing that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. This whole virus thing, and it's so funny how, and definitely I take it seriously, but the seriousness that we are now facing with this virus, having to do with something that's just spreading like in the atmosphere. And you can believe that, it's taking out people every moment is taking out people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can we believe that there is a higher power who is lifting up people, who is, just doing all of the things that are happening that we consider good, you know, whether it's getting that job that we, need, or providing our needs of food and shelter and all of those things. And those are the things, when I'm meditating, which is not just at night, not just in the morning, but anytime. I have this thing of when I look out my window, and I'm looking out the window right now, I'm seeing the trees blowing, the leaves blowing. What, a few days ago when it was hot, like 80 some degrees, and then in the next moment, it's,
It's like God's
chilly,
next breath is
you
like,
know, it's like, what do I have to do
yeah,
to let you know I got this?
yeah.
I
That's
got you. So it's really this forgiveness thing should come easy. I know it comes easy for me, and the older I get, it comes easier and easier and easier, because it's not going to take one thing from me to, at a disagreement or an argument, to say, okay, okay, agree to disagree. That's easy. That's easy. It's not going to take one thing from me. It's not going to take one thing from you to say, okay, it's all good, you know. But I think this is a very interesting topic, because it's one where, even in dealing with the leadership of this country, and I started about a year ago actually praying for Mr. Trump. Uh, I've been praying for him. I've been praying for God to soften his heart, for God to, just have a moment with him. Whatever you choose to do, God, because I know you got my back. I know you got our back. But I've really seriously been praying for him. I know we hear and we say a lot of things jokingly but serious
some people not
about,
joking.
and some things really make you laugh. But it, my godmother said this to me once when I was going through my Israel experience. She said to me, and I dealt with a functioning good government worker alcoholic as a partner, as a husband, my first marriage, and had a good heart. He had a good heart, but he was sick. She said to me, "How do you deal with sick people? When you go into the hospital and someone's sick, whatever the disease is, do you bash them? Do you, further pulverize them in their pain and their suffering, or do you, treat them with care?" And that's what she said, you have to do with this person, because they are sick. Alcoholism is an illness, it's a sickness. And when I started to look at it like that, I took on a whole entire new attitude in dealing with it. Um, and that's what I believe we have to do when it comes to forgiving one another. When you point a finger, look how many fingers are pointing back at you. And when we do that, we realize, he who is without sin cast the first stone. Yeah, it works
I
for
was going to
me.
ask a question, but I want to get this king statement in here. Um, Michael says, malice in the heart blocks the way of forgiveness and your true belief in your Lord God. If you don't remove the malice in your heart, um, it is not true forgiveness. It's your true belief in Lord God, knowing that God is most merciful, most forgiving. Your own experiences, how forgiving your own experiences. How is the proof of God forgiveness in your own life? Look how He forgave you. And so remove the malice in your heart and clearness of the actions of. Let me see. I'm trying, King. I'm trying, King. Let lights of blessings in to clear out your heart, and let the ray of forgiveness in. You can be able to forgive and still in good grace of God. Let your will be done, or let God's will be done. And let me see. Some of us don't have capabilities to forgive because they themselves haven't forgiven themselves. Exactly, we were talking about that
Absolutely.
earlier. So how can they forgive
Yeah.
but they haven't experienced true forgiveness? We
Hmm.
were actually talking about that earlier. I feel you, Key. I feel you. So
Hmm.
I I because it um hasn't been my individual testimony, but I've been attached to people who have experienced it. So we talk a lot about forgiveness, and it's going through a trial is a badge of honor, and I know it's the same get up. I know it's the same response, um, and I've seen it done. But when it's done to you, it hits different. So forgiving someone who has taken the life um, of a loved one. Um,
It's a hard pill, I'm sure.
yeah, and I remember being in high school, and one of my really close friends was murdered. And his mom, the weirdest thing for me was, when because I stayed connected with her as far as when she was going through the trial, and it was at a certain point where she just forgave. And so she said she would sit there, in the zone, because whatever the outcome of the trial was, it didn't matter. You know, um, she had made peace with the fact that her son was no longer here, and she had no other reason not to forgive this gentleman for taking the life of her son, an innocent life. It wasn't even, I guess if you could put, we talk about the why. If you could put your hand on it and say, oh, well, he was robbing you, or oh, you guys were in a fight and you got angry, or um, this gentleman literally looked across the street, saw some guys breaking into his car, started shooting, and the people that were coming out of the store, and one of them being a friend of mine, um, they stopped at the corner looking to see what was going on, and he turned the gun on them and started shooting at them. And so, um, I don't know, in that fit of anger or rage, I guess it didn't matter who he was shooting. But at a certain point, she was just like, it doesn't even matter. I don't even want to know why. I don't even want to know why. Um, and we were in 11th grade. So for me, I'm like, this being my friend, I'm like, like he didn't even have the opportunity to be everything that he could have been. That's what I thought. You know what I'm saying? That was what was in my mind. But as years passed, I realized, who am I to say that he didn't have the opportunity or did not become everything that God wanted him to be? Um, who puts the timing on our life, and when we reach that level of becoming? If we're not, hey, Miss Hall, if we're not the creator, like, who puts that timing on? And I get it. Like, I can say this, and as quickly as I say it, I'm pretty sure that I would have a hard time. I would have a hard time. So, you know, how do you get to the point? Because all this sounds good. Even what I've said, what God has given me to say, um, sounds good. But when you get to a point where that hurt is what we would consider senseless, like, how do you even get, there was a point where something had happened where someone had hurt me so bad that I knew I wasn't able to forgive them. So my prayer was, God, just take me to the place of forgiveness. Like, I ain't ready to go in, but just take me to the place so that the mist from the doors of forgiveness would kind of like, breeze past me, because it was so big for me that um I knew it would be hard and difficult for me. I didn't even see forgiveness in sight. So my prayer every night about that situation was that God would take me to the place of forgiveness. And now I'm able to be cordial with that person. And I literally, not even just cordial, because cordial, that's shade. For real. Not even just cordial, but I'm able to be myself. Like, there are no holds barred. Like, I'm not, you know, um, standing in front of them with this wall up. I'm much more mature than I was then. I'm much more wiser about certain situations and what I allow to penetrate my spirit. But I'm literally like, um, with no reservation, in a space where I can speak with them candidly without, any animosity or any ill thoughts in the back of my mind. But it wasn't a hurt of, like, you killed one of my loved ones. Um, how do you minister to that? Like, how do you? That's a hard pill to swallow for me, because we get attached as humans. We get attached, and my, for my loved one to be no longer here with me, and you're the cause or the culprit. Like,
Vengeance is mine, said the Lord. It's like being in a vehicle. We call it the backseat drivers.
mm-hmm,
And I know I've been in the back seat with uh, some loved ones who are, by every sense of the word, good drivers, but their good driving has me on the edge of my seat. And do I jump across the seat and take the wheel, or do I sit back, not necessarily relax, but trust God to do the navigating, do the driving through that person? And there have been many times that I've done that, and I'm catching on into the door handle to
I
this,
do it all the
you know,
time with Johnny Castro.
yeah, I am. But at the same time, knowing those things that we have control over and the things that we do not, such as in the serenity prayer says to us, knowing the things that we have control over and things we don't. And it's not, nobody said it was going to be easy or that it is easy. And certainly in a case where La is actually kind of watering down her situation, because I believe, to my understanding, was her high school sweetheart. And I know literally I spent almost, I would say, a year, just, but that's probably longer than that, of just actually holding her and comforting her and, talking her through it, and seeing her go through this spiritual change in her life, as a result of that. I could almost see the metamorphic changes that she was going through. Um, but there comes a time in our lives, and I believe again that this is what we're experiencing now. It's one of those times where we stop and realize the fact that we are all sequestered, we call it quarantined, in our homes or wherever we are in one space. If ever there was a time for us to stop and focus and meditate and start realizing and recognizing not only who we are but whose we are,
Mm-hmm.
and through that
Yeah.
we can, be at peace. There's a song, I'm at Peace, I believe Vicky Yohe. There's a song, Andre Crouch, Take Me Back. Take me back to the place where I first believed, you know, to the place where I first realized and recognized that I didn't just get here through the birth canal on my own or by my mom or my dad, but that I was placed there before, even when you were in your mother's womb. Plans were already in place for you, your purpose already in place. And I know to some that's kind of hard to circle and not to grasp. But when you get to that point, and I believe this is the time where we are given the opportunity to really focus and think, about our spiritual being,
Hmm.
you know. And I really believe that this is the time. This is the time. So, forgiving, again, nobody said it was going to be easy, but it should be not hard for us to realize that who are we not to forgive someone? We're being forgiven every day.
Yeah.
If you every evening, and that goes back to that look in the mirror at yourself,
Hmm.
look at yourself, look at the things that you have done that were not good, capital G, you know, look at those things alone. Stop looking at the other person. Look at what your part in the play. And I think when we do that, it will become more bearable for us to forgive the other guy, the other person. That's my take, and I'm sticking to it.
It's a good
And I speak
take.
by the hour.
It's a
Hey,
good take.
yeah,
This
I'm
has
not gonna
been
drop
real,
the
man.
mic
I
this time.
I needed this, I'm pretty sure, and I feel in my spirit that a lot of people needed this. And so, those were
Yeah,
just jumping on. Um,
so
it would
yeah,
serve you good to go back to the beginning once this live ends.
definitely.
And speaking of that, we actually have a YouTube channel, so um, I'm gonna put it in the comments in this live so you can check it out. You can go to our website and you can also go directly to the YouTube to find our channel. But a lot of these, well, all of them rather, the topics that we've been speaking about and people have been chiming into have been so necessary for where we are today, and necessary for where we need to be tomorrow, to get back on track, to get ourselves back where we need to be so that we can be our best selves, so that we can be used for the glory of God, so that, other people can be blessed. So check them out. Check them out. This has been awesome. What's going on, Gerald? What's going
Hey,
on?
Jerome.
Um, this has been an awesome time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and I also plug. During this week, how many of you actually watched our president